Welcome to Celebrating Act Two. Celebrating Act Two is the user manual for the second half of your life.
Hey, good to see you again. Thanks for joining us on Celebrating Act Two. I'm John Coleman and my partner Art Kirsch, and our special guest, our regular contributor, our Hollywood historian, Manny Pacheco.
So, Manny, how are you?
I'm doing great.
So we were about 3 months ago talking about getting together and doing some live interviews at
Yeah,
some little get together run by an outfit called TCM. And
right.
for some reason they put it aside. Maybe it was the pandemic. I mean, maybe. But
Maybe.
in any event, they are that, aren't they? What's happening with?
Well, what's coming up in August is something they've been doing for a number of years now. They have 2 months where they devote to just a certain array of really A-list kind of movies. In February, they do the 31 Days of Oscar. But in August, they do Summer Under the Stars, where they take one actor or actress and they devote 24 hours to their pictures. And you end up with the usual suspects, people like Cary Grant and Burt Lancaster and Rita Hayworth,
Sure.
Lana Turner, John Wayne, Betty Davis. I mean, you get the reliable stars every time they do this. But then they turn around and they throw out some nuggets that you wouldn't expect them to throw out. And boy, I'll tell you, it creates a certain amount of magic. I mean, for example, let's say 24 hours of Charlie Chaplin. Now, Charlie Chaplin's an icon, but you don't think about doing a whole tribute to him on TCM. And so
Right.
that really stands out. John
And
Barrymore,
and
the
yeah, but
Barrymore.
also, Manny, you can't see all the Charlie Chaplin films in one place anymore. You
That's right.
could, you might find one here, one there, six
That's
months
right.
later. But for this 24 hours of Charlie Chaplin, even if they only took five of his films and repeat them, that's a wonderful film festival for Charlie Chaplin for the day.
That's exactly right. And then you come up with other names that, absolutely iconic, but you just don't think of 24 hours of William Powell, which would be just an absolute joy for me.
And they're not all Thin Man movies.
That's right. They're not all he made such wonderful movies. Charlton Heston. Imagine
Yes.
24 hours of Charlton Heston, or a great name like John Barrymore, the Barrymore name. I mean, his career kind of took a slide in the late 30s into the 40s, but his early 1930s movies were absolutely terrific.
Right.
Now,
And
my problem with the 31 Days of Oscar are some of the names that they do pick are a little, at best, curious
well,
to me.
now you said 31 Days of Oscar. We're talking about
I'm
Summer
sorry.
Under the
I'm
Stars.
sorry. You're right. Summer Under
That
the
which
Stars.
is like what? There's 6 months separated. There's August and December, I think, or
That's right.
August and January.
August and
Yeah.
February. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's right. I'm sorry. You're right. It's the Summer Under the Stars. There's some names there that I don't know that I could spend 24 hours of watching. Anne
Well,
Shirley, really Anne Shirley, or
well,
Diane
wait,
Moore.
wait, wait, wait. Aunt Shirley. I think she only made one picture. It was Murder My Sweet with Dick Powell.
But there's
I,
there's there's 19 hours worth of credits.
yeah, she was she was a great young, pretty. I'll call her an ingenue, but she quit films at 26.
Yeah,
I don't know how many movies she made, but the only one I can remember is Murder My Sweet. Claire Trevor and Dick Powell. Great, great movie. I love the movie, but she got third billing under Claire Trevor.
and that's the problem. If this is Summer Under the Stars and your fifth or sixth build, are you really showcasing that star? I'll give you a great example. I know this is one of Art's favorites, Sammy Davis Jr., a five-star entertainer. He could do it all: dance, sing,
Yes,
act, you name it, he could do
wonderful,
it. But did he ever
wonderful.
star in a film? I mean, really was the star. Ocean's
No,
11, he was featured, but really?
Magnificent Seven or whatever that was. He was in
Ocean's
Ocean's
11.
11.
Ocean's 11, yeah. He
Yeah.
appeared in a lot of the. I mean, I guess this is an excuse to show some of those Rat Pack films. But again, is he the star? It's more Frank Sinatra or Dean Martin.
Right.
So to do 24 hours of Sammy Davis Jr., I don't think is doing justice, for the premise of the 31 days of Oscar. Now,
Well,
uh,
well, yep. Don't
Oh,
misspeak. It's not for the 31 days of Oscar.
oh, I did
It's
it
for
again.
Summer Under the Stars.
John,
Now
you're being
let's
so
clear this up.
impolite. You're so impolite today. It's so like you, but you normally control yourself. Manny,
It, it,
here on, I'll be the one to smack you,
yeah,
okay? Because
bam.
John is really getting tough.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, I love both these festivals, and they're different. The 31 days of Oscar, they pick Oscar-winning movies
Or nominated.
nominated.
or nominated
Right.
based on the Oscar, based on their popularity, based on their awards, not based on who's in them.
Right.
And it's a wonderful festival. But the premise is the Oscar. This Summer Under the Stars is completely. You might get if TCM doesn't have a good Cary Grant movie in their library, you'll get the only Cary Grant movie they've got in their library. It might be his worst movie, but it's Cary Grant. And
Right.
the fun of seeing him in a bad movie and a good movie and an early movie and a late movie, that's what this festival is about. And I just
Manny,
love it.
Manny, let's help salvage something out of this interview, which is headed south.
Well,
Okay,
oh,
I'm going. We're
I
going to
got
go
a lot
back.
to
Well,
talk
no,
about.
John. We're going to go back to a one shot of you, and please tell us what, with your golden touch of things forgotten, but of the 31 here days probably set aside, in your opinion,
Oh,
to enhance our
oh,
month.
how can you
All
not
right.
watch every day?
Oh, well, obviously they always devote the weekends to the stars, so you can expect Cary Grant or John Wayne or Betty Davis on a Saturday or Sunday. But if you're asking me for three or four names, S.Z. Sakal, Cuddles Sakal, of course,
Wait,
Carl
wait, wait,
Weathers in Casablanca, but he was in so many great
wait.
films.
Tell us who. That name is not familiar. Who
As
is
they
He's
S?
he's
call
big, jolly, older Hungarian. You know him the minute you see him. Again, he was
character actor.
Carl the waiter in Casablanca, but he appeared in so many iconic films: Christmas in Connecticut, Ball of Fire. I mean, some of the all-time great classic. He always played opposite Danny Kaye in movies, or Dennis Morgan and Jack Carson in movies. He played well at opposite Doris Day. You will just he was even in a western with Errol Flynn, if you can
Yeah.
believe that.
So
That's
he's one of those character actors that we would recognize, but we don't know his name.
and he chews up the scenery every time he's on. So
Yeah.
August 4th, S.Z. Sakal. Here's a name you wouldn't expect me to say, but on August 9th, a modern entry on this list, Goldie Hawn. Folks don't think of her as any more than a comedian, but of course she owns her own production company, has made a bevy of great films, and
Overboard.
over absolutely, and of course she was wonderful in Private Benjamin, and she wins an Oscar opposite Walter Matthau in that lovely piece, Cactus Flower.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
on
No, she was
August
she
9th,
was a she was a great television star with Laugh In,
right.
who started her own production company, made a lot of films, very, very successful.
And
And
I'll tell you who's going to have a box of popcorn watching all day, and that's Kurt Russell, without a doubt.
I'm
Uh,
looking I'm looking down the list here and I see Diana Dors.
uh, yeah.
How many movies did Diana Dors make?
Well,
I mean,
yeah, and all of her movies are kind of schlocky. I think that is for those hardcore folks who loves to, hide in their basement to watch movies. I think that that's just one of those. She would be great for those late night edgy kind of films. The kind of films you might watch at one of those art houses that they play her films every Saturday at midnight. That kind of thing. Or
Okay,
Alan DeLeon. I don't know where they came up with him, Alan DeLon or DeLeon. I don't even know how to pronounce his name. I don't know how they do 20, and they end the 31-day Summer Under the Stars festival with him.
Yeah.
Really?
Well, that's yeah, kind of
Talk about
when you
going out with a fizzle and not a bang.
yeah, when you get to the Alan Delon, you know the festival's over. Yeah.
get us one
Um,
more, Manny. Get us at least one more day of don't
Well,
miss.
absolutely. If you're going to pick a day, how about August 17th? The fiery Irish spit brand, Maureen O'Hara. John, that's got to be screaming your name.
yes.
I,
Faith and Bejabbers, Manny. I've got to watch. I'll be there watching Maureen O'Hara. Oh,
I mean,
it'll be a grande.
her great movies with Charles Lawton, and then of course her favorite co-star John Wayne. I mean,
Yeah.
how is that not going to be an entirely great day? Probably anchored by, of course, a screening of Miracle on 34th Street. Oh, I mean, your day is set.
Yeah. I've got another female name that I would be particularly interested to see a lot of her movies. She made a ton of movies. Dolores Del Rio.
Oh, yes, and very
Um,
an icon for the Latino community too.
she was in like 100 movies. I don't know. And she was in Cheyenne Autumn. That's where I first saw her. And
Right.
then I realized, holy cow, this girl's been doing movies for a long time.
And
But
she had a real ethos about her. She would never play a caricature of a Latino, even back in the
yes,
30s. So she turned down the role in Viva Via that Fay Ray ended up doing because
really.
she felt that it was too much of a stereotype. So she's really a pioneer for the Latino community.
Yeah. And she had some great parts. She was a
Yeah.
great actress, I think.
It'll probably be a great day of watching her films. One
Yeah.
more thing I want to mention. I appreciate the two actors, but why they would follow Charlie Chaplin with Goldie Hawn, that makes no sense. That seems like a train wreck.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
folks that love Charlie Chaplin aren't necessarily going to love Goldie Hawn. The going back to back, I mean, that just tells you
Well,
how
comedy.
vast. It's very
It's
vast.
comedy.
Yeah, it
That
is.
the common
That choice
denominator
was
there is
comedy that
comedy.
way too, right?
Totally different. Yeah. Norma Shearer.
Yeah.
Norma Shearer was, did she ever make a talkie?
Oh yes, and in fact, she is again a pioneer
Yeah.
in the movement we call pre-code. In other words, it's the era where women were empowered sexually and they were empowered in a business sense. They were a complete female in roles that really showed that they could win in the end. And the
Yeah.
pre-code era was the person who led that charge was Norma Shearer.
Yeah. And
And
the Hayes Code came in about 1935, something like that.
34, 35. Yeah. Yeah. And by the way, Norma Shearer was also married to the great Irving Thalberg. So, of course, many of her roles, she had the blessing of, the most powerful producer at MGM.
Right. Right.
That made her the queen of Hollywood.
would you
Yeah.
recommend more than a quarter of a day of John Barrymore?
Well, John Barrymore, I'm sure they're going to show a lot of his silence. Don't be surprised if they don't show his silence because
Yeah.
he was a bona fide, silent film legend before he did the talkies. So,
Yeah.
absolutely.
A
But then,
great, a
yeah.
great list of 31 days. Each day has, maybe they're not all great stars like SZ Zakol, but they're all fascinating names. And yeah, the quality of the movies is going to vary
I
because
like
it's
to say it's Summer Under the Stars and Anne Shirley. So
Well, I want to make a prediction. I want to make a prediction that, um, uh, and just to let it, we don't know exactly when this is going to air, celebrating Act Two, but we're in the middle of June taping this, and this will be an August event, and I suspect that a lot of us are pretty much sequestered of your prime audience of the Forgotten Hollywood devotees. A good deal of them are still going to be sequestered in August. So if you're worried about what you're going to do for August, okay, you got to back. This is Plan B, at least Plan B,
that's good.
and a couple of days of Plan A, but they're definitely this is a backup plan for the whole month. In case you're going to spend a lot of time at home.
I
But
do it anyway.
Manny, how's the best way
Yeah.
until August for people to find out more about the amazing stuff you know and have shared at one time or another? They go to
Well, ForgottenHollywood.com, and may I mention that I have a lot of friends that are really big on forgotten movies, small movies, movies that aren't run. I'm telling you, I'm going to get a lot of feedback about my comments about Anne Shirley. And to my friends who are big on Hollywood history, please forgive me. I was just having some fun.
Okay, well, and also everybody, you can like go to Celebrating Act Two channel and binge watch Manny and other really amazing people out there. But Manny is one of our most fun people to talk to. Even before we would do stuff, we used to joke with Manny. So it's great that you're able to join a lot of your stuff. Thank you, man.
Anytime you'd like.
For more on Celebrating Act Two, visit our webpage, follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and tell your friends. Celebrating Act Two is the user manual for the second half of your life.